What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Black Woman speaks on the power of definition, defining oneself to others, and how we have been exploited, and how Europeans have been defining the definition of what it is to be black, right? And then they have been broadcasting that all across the world. So everybody, all POCs, all people around the world, their view on us, the definition that they have come to, the definition that they have in their mind of us has been defined by those white people who are envious of us, jealous of us, exploitive of us, and who fear us. Therefore, when they project who we are for monetary gain, they project the elements of us that will project fear or will create fear amongst the global population for us, because they don't want the global population to admire, envy, and befriend us and allyship with us. They want the global population to fear us and think that they are in fact the default human who, if they want to get ahead in life and live a normal life, you need to associate with them. The demon themselves are trying to act human while telling everybody that the human is the demon. You get it? That's why defining oneself is very important. That's why I say I'm an African. You understand how powerful it is when I say I'm an African with all this goddamn confidence and don't give a shit what some Negro got to say about it? Dog, I don't even give a fuck what an African got to say about it. They try to say I'm not African. I don't give a fuck what they got to say, because as far as I'm concerned, they can't be more African than me. Nobody can be more African than me. There's not a man that can be more African than me. I'm about as African as you can get. You can't tell me otherwise, because I've defined myself based off what I am. I don't got to call myself a Hebrew Israelite and go off the definition of some white person that created some religion, right, to control the masses back when and where and how it's still being controlled now. I don't need that. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. I'm not a fictitious character in one book. I'm not a Moor. I mean, by definition, that technically I am a Moor, but I'm not a Moor by its definition at which black folks in America try to define themselves. Even though I am a Moor based off the definition of what those Europeans used to call us, you know, when they saw us, in contrast to them. I'm not an Ethiopian from Ethiopia, but I am an Ethiopian in contrast to those Europeans who used the word Ethiopian to define black folk, right, from Africa. So even though I'm not an Ethiopian, I can be considered an Ethiopian to a European using that word to define what it is to be black. I know I'm black. I know black means African. I'm smart enough to know that nigger, okay, the word nigger, everybody's done. Nigger is the English way of saying negro. English people are not rolling their tongues like Latinos and Portuguese. Negro. I know that negro is defined as black. I also know that negro or nigger is a definition of a group of people from the Niger Delta Congo. Niger, Niger, Niger Delta Congo. We are us black people as defined by ourselves and the global, the global population as black, as African. That's why black and African are interchangeable, right? And that's why even though the word nigga, right, which we have reclaimed for ourselves because we have the power of definition. So therefore, we took the N-E-R and we made it positive and we used it for ourselves. We defined the word nigger to take it from a derogatory term to a term of brotherlyhood. Even though a lot of people don't agree with that. I understand that. I'm kind of on the fence with that. I'll be saying, right? But, if we could not say it, cool. But I'm always going to say Niger. I'm always going to be able to say Niger Delta Congo, because that's who we are. We are Niger Delta Congo black Africans. And when you know who you are, you got all the power in the world. It ain't a goddamn freaking person on the planet that can tell me who I'm not. It can tell me who I am. I define who I am because I know who I am. And when you know who you are, you sitting in that goddamn frame, you can speak with all confidence from that perspective. And it's not just enough to define yourself, but you have to learn and understand the structures of your foundation of why you define yourself that. What makes you so important if that's your definition? What's the history of your foundation, right? What is the culture of your foundation of being a black African? How are black African, Ethiopian, Moor, black, phenotypical, Niger Delta, Congo people supposed to act in society? What are our accomplishments? What are we doing in the present day? What is our plans for the future? That's how I present myself from that Afrocentric point of view. Meaning, I'm a black person, and my perspective on the world comes from an African, unapologetic, aboriginal of the planet, global world dominator. All right? The ultimate human. Okay? Upper end echelon multicellular organism. That's what I am. All right? A God having a experience on earth. I'm a fractal God spirit. Just like everybody else, including white people. All right? I'm a fractal God spirit having a human experience because I want to know what it's like to not be perfect. I'm here because I want to know what pain and suffering is like. What hardship is like. Because on the other side, there ain't no hardship. You can't learn on the other side where we really from, where home is from. Everything is cool and peaceful and copacetic. We don't learn nothing there unless we read it, but only experience gives you that gives you that thing, to give you that extra, knowledge about how things work. That's why I'm here. I'm here to struggle. I'm here to find love within struggle. I'm here to find happiness and success and within struggle. I'm here to commingle with other spirits having the same experience here to see how can we work together when everything ain't all perfect. How can we love each other when all things ain't perfect? How do we find love in a place devoid of it? That's what we're here for. How do we enjoy life and explore the things that this world has to offer while we're here temporarily? How do our spirits use these units and protect them and have them run as long as they possibly can? How do we do all that? These are the things that are important in life. All right? And that's what I'm here to do. And first you have to define yourself, right, as a human being, as a spirit, as a person who's just as important as the next person. Because there's no person on this planet that's more important than anybody else on this planet, no matter what color they are, no matter what language they speak, no matter what fictitious human religion they believe in. And that is just the truth. So this black woman is going to speak on defining oneself and how defining the fact that we have not been always in charge and the definition of what it is that we are has caused us to have so many acrimonious altercations globally, right? But then when those same people, right? Think about it. When those same people who were once ignorant about the culture of African Americans, what happens when they get to truly engage with African Americans in their culture? They're shocked. They're bewildered. Those are the nicest people in the world. I never felt so safe. Ask any white person, any Asian person, any Latino person that had the privilege to be amongst African Americans or Africans for any amount of time, whether it be leisure, whether it be during hard times, whether it be during any struggle time, whether it be in the good times, and asked them how welcome and loving and protected they felt being around us, the so-called savages that everybody should be afraid of. And then let's go to a white and European neighborhood and let's see how hospitable those Europeans are to any POC, any Asian, any African who dares to participate in something that they consider white culture, which is really just white people practicing other people's cultures, depending on what day it is. Because they got cultural themes and shit. Taco Tuesday, Indian Wednesday, African food Thursday, fried chicken, African American food Friday and shit. That's what they do. They don't have European English fish and chips Saturday, no, do they? Huh? Where's the cranberry goddamn potato salad Mondays? They ain't got that shit, huh? Tell me something about pure European culture that we celebrate in America. All of us. Tell us one thing. Name one thing Europeans do in America that doesn't belong to somebody else. I'll wait. Put it in the comment section. Besides, extracurricular activities of taking advantage of young children. Besides that. All right, don't bring that up. We know that. That's already, All right? So let me know. Anyway, we got to define ourselves. And we have the power to define ourselves. And you know what I'm not going to define myself as? As a foundational black American. Because I'm a foundational African. I'm a foundational human. You're not going to demote me to a foundational American. That's a demotion. All right? That's taking me from a general to a private. Why would I want to do that? Huh? Especially when that private is a piece of shit. All right? Can't do his job. Right? Can't stand in line. Can't stand in formation without moving around. Right? Can't function. All right, just talking shit. I'm not going to be that private. I'm a general. All right? I define myself as one. So why would I belittle myself and define myself as something lesser than, right? Created by somebody that's lesser than me. You understand what I mean? So anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. This is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach some. I'm out.
I don't know if y'all know this, but one of the most irreversible elements of social power that historically powerful groups lose over historically powerless groups during revolutions and social progress is the power of definition. So what I mean by that is, okay, you know what? Instead of trying to explain what I mean, I'll just give you an example. So when I was in college, when I was like a sophomore slash junior in college, I wrote a 35-page research paper on the stereotypical portrayals of Black women in reality television. And the goal with this qualitative research was to prove that media representation actively affects how real people are treated in real life in a measurable way. Right? And so up until like the 1980s and really the 1990s is when it took off, but I'll say the 80s. Okay. Up until the 1980s, white America had almost complete and total power over how Black Americans were represented in the media. And it's because of white Americans' representations of us that people on the other side of the world who've never even interacted with Black people are like scared of Black people, because they're looking at white Americans' media representations of Black Americans. But in the 80s, something shifted with media representation, and Black Americans took the power of definition out of the hands of white Americans and wielded it in their own hands. And this is where we get like dream team combos like Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. This is where we get the Cosby Show. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is when it really started to take off. Martin, half and half, one-on-one girlfriends, all the way up and through today in the Shonda Rhimes, Ava DuVernay era, right? Black people reclaiming the power of self-definition changed our destiny forever. White people no longer get to tell the world who we are because we tell the world who we are. And really, I guess you could argue that this started in like the 60s with like Motown, because we still weren't like we still weren't getting fairly represented in the media as far as like television and movies, but music is where it started, because that's like the heart of Black America is music. So I guess you could argue that it started in the 60s, but the point is, we reclaimed that sovereign power of self-definition, and through that, we wield an insane amount of social capital in the modern world. Like Black culture is the culture, right? Okay, so the same thing can be said about women. A lot of the lesser evolved men of today are freaking out, and they're not emotionally intelligent enough to know all of the nuances of why they're freaking out. But one of the reasons that they're freaking out, even though they don't know how to say it out loud, is they are like rapidly, I can't even say slowly at this point, they are rapidly losing the power to define women. They are losing the power to tell the world what a woman and a girl is. They are losing the power to turn around and tell a lady what a lady should be, or tell a woman what a lady should be. You know what I mean? In 2006, it was really, really easy for a man to like slut shame a woman into oblivion. I was a kid in 2006. So at school, if a boy called you a hoe or called you a slut, everybody was in agreement by like 8 a.m. the next morning. Like there was no question. If a man said it, then it must be true. What did you do with him? Like that's, the movie Easy A. Like that power of a man to define who a woman is has always been one of their biggest weapons, one of their most formidable tools in the social and cultural control of women. But that power is waning right now, and they really don't want you to know that. This is a big part of the reason, by the way, why so many Black men in particular are so mad about Meg and Pete. And I say Black men in particular because you don't really see a ton of white men getting up in arms about Megan Thee Stallion. And that's because historically, they're already in a position of power over her. They don't see Black women as a threat to their social power. Whether they can acknowledge that consciously or subconsciously, it doesn't really matter. Meg and Pete is not a threat to the white man's power, but she is a threat to the black man's power, because black men have historically struggled a lot in America trying to figure out where they fit in the world outside of athletics and music, and outside of being hypersexual. And a lot of black men take it very personally when a black woman doesn't readily agree to live her life in their shadow, because they feel like she's taking away what it means to be a man, which is to have dominion over the earth and all living things, right? So anyway, I'm getting tangential. So anyway, a lot of black men don't like Megan Thee Stallion, and they feel threatened by her because they don't have the power to define her. She defines herself, and she doesn't define herself because she's rich. She doesn't define herself because she's so successful and she's so famous and she's so beautiful. None of that matters. She defines herself because she's a sovereign woman, and you can be a sovereign woman whether you're a fucking 6 foot tall, 200 pounds of pure muscle stallion like Meg, or you can define yourself if you're a 5'1", 250 pound roly poly. Cute little roly poly, and it's fine. Like, you don't have to be the beauty standard in order to define yourself as a woman, because the power dynamics in this world are shifting, regardless of what anybody wants to tell you, regardless of these doom and gloom, miserable ass people on the internet who want to believe that the whole world is falling apart and that there's no hope and everybody should just run and hide and never go outside again because we're all doomed. Like, regardless of what everybody's trying to tell you, the old power dynamics are rapidly melting away. And a big sign of that is the fact that women can now define themselves. A lot of women don't know what to do with this power. They don't know how to define themselves quite yet, and that's okay, because social progress is a gradual thing that happens over decades, not over hours, so it's fine. But like 20 years ago, black men collectively determining that Megan Thee Stallion was a hoe who does not deserve love or respect or friendship, that would have been enough to basically tank her career. But it's not enough to tank her career anymore, because what they think about women doesn't matter anymore. How they want to define women in the world has no power. It's like trying to hold water in your hand. It doesn't work anymore. And they're upset about that, and they don't know why they're upset about that. They don't have the words to explain. But women have reclaimed the power of self-definition, and that is major. That's huge. We are no longer defined by our relationship to men. You may not see this pattern on the surface yet. I promise you, though, it is there and it is happening. I'm watching it. I'm extremely observant. I'm hella good at pattern recognition. I can see it everywhere. The writing's on the fucking wall in red ink and big old capital letters. Men are losing the power to define women. And then you might ask yourself, well, why is self-definition so important? Why is it so important to be able to define yourself? Because when you can define yourself, you can define your reality. Speaking from a Black American, when Black Americans were able to rewrite the narrative on how they were represented in the media, they effectively rewrote the narrative on how people were able to treat them in real life. Because again, through my research, I found that media representation directly impacts how people are viewed in real life. And when you can impact perception, you can alter reality. It's the ultimate power. And a lot of men really resent the fact that women are capable of doing this, because most men themselves are not sovereign individuals. They are groupthink animals. They are very much defined by what their family thinks, what their friends think, what random men on the street think. Like, they are very much enslaved to the opinions of others. Most men are, and because most men are unevolved. If a man is evolved, this doesn't apply, let it fly. But most men are unevolved, especially if they're young, and especially, you know what, yeah, just if they're young. And so a lot of men really resent the fact that women have been able to wield this power. But again, it doesn't really matter what they resent and how they feel, because how men view women is mattering less and less by the day. You don't get to decide whether or not Megan is a hoe or not. You don't get to decide whether or not she's worthy of love, respect, admiration, and friendship and success. You don't. That power is no longer yours. That shit might have worked in the 30s. That shit might have worked in the 90s. That shit might have worked in the 2000s when I was a kid. But it just doesn't hold the same weight. And bad news, bad news, bad news for all of those men who think that way. It's never going to come back. That power to define women that your grandfather had, and maybe even to a certain extent that your father or your older brothers had, does not exist for you anymore. You don't get to wield that same tool, because that tool has disintegrated. It's water in your hands, sand between your fingers. And, self-definition is a power. And with all power comes responsibility. And there are a lot of women who are going to shrink from that responsibility and continue to allow their boyfriends, husbands, fathers, etc. to define them, because that's easier than the self-discovery journey of defining yourself. And whatever, that's your decision. But I'm just telling you, the writing's on the wall. Men are losing the power to define what a woman is and what a lady is. And here's really the gag, right? When a historically powerful group, like in this analogy, I'm saying men, right? When a historically powerful group starts to lose that social element of power that is defining an oppressed group, the reason I said at the beginning of the video that it's completely irreversible is the harder you try to maintain that grip on the power to define another person, the more you lose that power. Like the faster it slips through your fingers. And a really good example of this is men have always wanted to present themselves as being stoic and aloof and strong and unbothered. Like that's a really big part of Western masculinity, right? There is literally nothing less stoic and less aloof and less unbothered than men getting on the internet and consistently bullying Megan and being mad as fuck while she is just living her best life. Like she is paying them dust, bitch. Like she is just moving on. Like she's moving on. She is racking up the money, like the brand deals. I think she's got a sponsorship with who? Hot Cheetos, Nike, Planet Fitness. Like it's crazy. And this is in addition to her insane rap career, right? So the men who want so badly to appear stoic and this and that are crashing the fuck out, which is the opposite of stoic, mind you, because they are losing this power and they know they're losing this power and there's no way to hold on to it because it's irreversible. The same can be said about white supremacists. The more they try to hold on to their power, the more they embarrass the hell out of themselves with Trump and just the bizarre fucking ghetto-ness of the Trump administration and everybody he surrounds himself with. Like white Americans, white supremacists in particular, have always wanted to present themselves as above it all. Not loud, not brash. We're not criminals. Those other people are criminals. Mind you, Trump is a criminal and everyone he surrounds himself with are criminals. You see how they're losing control of the narrative the harder they try to hold on to this power that was never really supposed to be theirs in the first place. The losing of this power is inevitable is what I'm trying to say. And I think it's also important to point out that women, at least in America, I can only speak for America, that's my expertise, women in America have been fighting for the power of self-definition since at least the 1830s. That was when first wave feminism started. Go back into my U.S. People's History of the United States playlist and find my videos where I'm talking about Chapter 6, The Intimately Oppressed. And that's where you can learn more about first wave feminism. First wave feminism was literally just women trying to convince the world that they were human beings. They weren't even going so far as to ask for equal rights. They were like, before we can ask for equal rights, we just need to get on the same page about the fact that, hey, we are human, you guys. And so this is a fight that has been going on for the almost 200 years at this point, and we're just now getting to the point where women are able to self-define. Now imagine what the next 200 years are gonna look like. Imagine what the next 20 years are gonna look like. We're doing really well. Keep it up.
The texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Sudan, boycott diamonds and gold. Free Sudan, boycott diamonds and gold. We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.